Hello, welcome. We are with the Young Environmentalist Society. I'm Sam,
I'm Zianya.
I'm Saoirse.
and today we are joined with Barley Dunne.
Hi guys,
Welcome.
thanks for having me.
Yeah.
All right. So when did you start working at the shellfish hatchery, and how did you start working there?
I started at the East Hampton Shellfish Hatchery back in 2004, a long time ago, 19 years ago, I guess. Before that, I worked at the Town of Islip Shellfish Hatchery, which is another municipal hatchery on the island. I grew their algae for them for about 2.5 years. Before that, I got a master's degree down at Auburn University in Alabama, studying oysters, oyster disease, and oyster reef restoration. And before that, and what really got me into shellfish was I was in the Peace Corps in the South Pacific in a country called Solomon Islands, which a lot of folks don't know where it is, but it's northeast of Australia. And it was very famous during World War II. There's a section of those islands called the Iron Bottom Sound because there were so many ships that were sunk there. But it's a beautiful, idyllic South Pacific country, and I was lucky enough to be basically a research technician on a black-lip pearl oyster research project. So that's what gave me, I worked on that with my wife for about 2 years, and that gave me the shellfish bug, and I've been doing it ever since. That was in the mid to late 90s.
What inspired you to follow this career path?
That work in the Peace Corps did. Before that, I was always outdoorsy. Growing up in New England, I was always biking, skiing, running, playing soccer, hiking. So anything that got me the ability to work outdoors was always a goal. I studied environmental studies and fish and wildlife biology and as an undergrad at University of Vermont, and then went off to that Peace Corps stint. So this was a great gig that kept me outdoors and growing things, which for me is key, being outdoors.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
All right. Where are you from originally, and did you study marine biology in college?
So I was born here on the island. I lived in Selden till I was about 6, and then we moved to Vermont, where I stayed through college. And like I said, just being there, being in that beautiful outdoor environment, I really enjoyed the work and studied fish and wildlife bio as an undergrad, and then ultimately got a master's degree at Auburn in fisheries and aquaculture. And that Peace Corps experience was really key because having actual on the ground true experience in a real project is almost just as, if not more important than the education, because you learn so much more being outdoors doing the work as opposed to being in a classroom studying it. Who's next?
What changes have you seen in the industry since you started, good and bad?
Changes in the industry. Let's see. Well, there's a lot more people doing it, which is good. There's a lot more oyster farms here on the island, which is great because the more oyster farms we have, the more people we have eating oysters, the more oysters we're going to grow in the water, which will help maintain water quality, provide habitat. Other goods, more oyster gardeners, that's another good thing. So there's more oyster farmers, more oyster gardeners. There's more educational opportunities like you guys coming to see our hatchery twice a year. You come to the hatchery and see the hatchery stage. You come and see the nursery stage. You come out to the field. So there's like every year there's more and more people coming to see the work and more people interested in the work. The bad is really more mostly climate related stuff, like more invasive species coming in. The invasive species that are already here are thriving. We've got the bay scallop die-off, which is a huge issue. Those, as you probably know, the bay scallops are a fall harvested crop, and they've been dying off the last 2 or 3 consecutive years. I think it's 3 consecutive years. So that's a huge hit to the local economy and everybody's palate, really. Everybody loves scallops. So that's one of the bads. And more harmful algae blooms because of excess nutrients in the water. But the good is that a lot of people are fixing that issue by installing innovative alternative septic systems, hopefully using less fertilizers. So there's definitely both goods and bads, and hopefully ultimately the goods will outweigh the bads and we'll be in better shape.
Yeah.
How does your career blend with your everyday life?
It's pretty much all encompassing, really. I mean, I actually have an oyster farm on the side, so not only do I enjoy my work at the shellfish hatchery, but I like to go home and continue doing it, growing oysters, farming oysters. My kids and my wife are all always out on the water with us and out on the beach, and we have a boat we play around on and try and do some fishing. So it's really it is my life, really. It's everything I do and everything I'm passionate about. Anything that involves being on or in the water, I'm game.
All right. What awareness would you like the public to know about aquaculture?
Yeah, that's a good one. So, there's many different forms of aquaculture. Some is bad, some is good. So, educating oneself as to which ones are bad and which ones are good. I won't target anyone necessarily right now, but there's some that have adverse environmental effects, some that end up introducing invasive species to certain areas. But one of the things you want to look at is like shellfish aquaculture, for instance, is really one of the best forms because they're a low trophic level animal. They are filter feeders, so oyster farmers are not introducing food to the environment where they're growing the oysters. And those oysters, just by being present on the farms and in the gardens, are providing habitat. For those that haven't had the luck to spend time at a farm or a nursery, you don't really see all the life that's in these oyster cages, right? There's little baby blackfish in there, black sea bass, all kinds of seaweeds and other things growing on these cages that otherwise would have no place to grow because the bottom of our bays are really barren and desert-like. So that's one of the beauties of this form of aquaculture. And of course, like I said, there are other ones that are detrimental and that we should probably try to avoid.
Was working at the shellfish hatchery always your first choice of careers? If not, what would it have been?
It was always something environmental and outdoors for me. When I originally went to college, I studied environmental studies, and that didn't really click with me too well. So I switched over to the fisheries and wildlife biology because I really kind of wanted to be like a wildlife biologist, like a park ranger kind of thing. And then the Peace Corps opportunity came up. And from there, I really started to want to be a hatchery manager. The site that I worked in the South Pacific, there was a guy there named Rainer Pitt, and he ran this beautiful, huge complex where they grew giant clams and sea cucumbers and the pearl oysters. And I thought his job was awesome, because he was growing all this stuff. He was outside. He's constantly, there's always a challenge. There's always something to fix, always something to rig and recreate. So that was really, once I saw his job and his passion, I kind of really wanted to pursue it myself and become, this hatchery manager kind of job, which is really, there's tons of variety to it. You spend time outdoors, you spend time in the lab, building tanks, always repairing things, because our industry, the shellfish industry, there's not really like a kit you can go out and buy. Like you can't go to the tractor store and buy the tractor, the exact tractor you need for growing corn or tomatoes, potatoes. Every farm and every hatchery and every nursery, they're all different. And there's many different ways to do it. So we're always innovating and fixing and repairing and making things new.
There seems to be quite a few challenges to the work that you do. What is the most challenging part of it, though?
For me, the most challenging. I would say, for me, now that I've gone from the low level, always working in the hatchery hands-on, now that I'm more of an administrator, that's the challenge, is just tolerating all that officey stuff, which is the exact reason I didn't get into this industry, right? I didn't want to end up working in an office. I mean, luckily I don't have to work in it. It's not like I'm in there every day, but that's the most challenging to me is when I'm sitting in my office thinking about the crew out on the farm, on the field, where I'd rather be. The other challenges are, when things go wrong, when our algae doesn't grow the way it should, or when larvae dies, which luckily doesn't happen often. But when it does, it's a challenge to figure out what happened, how to fix it, and to continue on.
That's great. Is there any advice you would like to give the younger generation?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds totally cheesy and totally cliche, but follow your dreams to an extent. I'm not doing the environmental world is not a big money maker. Surprise,
Right,
surprise. So you have to love what you do and love your life doing it, because you're not going to be, you're not going to have multiple homes and fancy cars, which you may not want in the first place. I personally don't. And a lot of those people really, honestly, aren't that happy, right?
Yeah.
Money doesn't buy happiness, that whole thing. So yeah, I would, to a certain extent, follow your dreams. If you want to be a farmer, be a farmer. And I would also suggest that, try and get some hands-on experience. Like I said, like that Peace Corps experience that I was lucky enough to have, it really got me into the field and got me a really true feel for what it was going to be like. And another thing that I highly recommend is to get some travel in, especially, out here in the East End. It's not typical America. It's a little different, and especially this country, the U.S., is also the exception. So I think it's really important for people to get out to other countries of the world, developing countries, and experience what the rest of the world is like, because that's really the rule. We're the exception. Those countries and the way those folks live is more the rule.
Yeah.
There's billions more of them than there are of us, and I think it's really important to just get a different perspective of how people live and how they get their food every day, how they go to work,
Right.
how they relax and spend family time and all that stuff. That's great.
Well, thank you for coming out and
Well,
spending
Dunne?
some time with us.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
It was a pleasure.